This is one of the storage sheds here at Roy Gale Baseball Complex, and if you look down here you can actually see there has actually been a lot of the wood that was torn off of the frame of this door. You can see actually the hinge was almost completely torn off. There's really an air of confidence in here tonight because of some of those races. Of course, nobody knows what's going to happen with the presidential election, but a lot of these local races the Republicans feel like they can win. This is 65 pounds of cocaine. This was all taken during a drug bust on Tuesday. Sometimes one of the most shocking things is to find somebody inside the elevator, sleeping in the parking garage late at night. This is an event that I love to cover because, well, I'm surrounded by food. Take a look at all of this. Food from 14 local restaurants. You can hear this group of RVC faculty members out here on the picket line, loud and proud. A freak accident indeed. Now, we're being told by people who work in this area that a man was up on this billboard and fell off of it. Instead of relying on forensic composites like this one, our local police departments instead rely on newer technology, like cell phone video and surveillance footage. Important thing to know is this is circumstantial evidence, and this was for an evidentiary hearing. That means that the burden of proof was actually lower in this hearing than it will be in the trial. That means that even though they have all this circumstantial evidence, you know, people who heard things from Katrina, that doesn't mean that that's the only thing that prosecutors can rely on in this trial. It all starts with a blank piece of paper and a pencil. Each stroke getting Detective Angel Reyes a little closer to catching a suspect.
We love the suspect that has a unique feature, like maybe a mole on the cheek or a scar somewhere, because you can draw that stuff and it really sticks out.
Detective Reyes has spent the last decade taking witness descriptions and putting them on paper.
This is a tool, just like fingerprint, DNA, or anything like that.
And many times the hours of sketching pays off.
We turned around and we caught this guy shortly afterwards.
But this is a dying art form and police tool. There are only about 100 full-time forensic artists left in the U.S. Instead of relying on forensic composites like this one, our local police departments instead rely on newer technology, like cell phone video and surveillance footage.
So depending on the angle and the camera, it can capture a pretty good resemblance of not only what has happened, but the people that are involved.
It's been more than 20 years since Rockford Police had a forensic artist on staff, most times just giving us a description of a suspect or surveillance video. That's the norm for most departments, but Detective Reyes says sometimes a picture is worth 1,000 words.
It may help an officer or a citizen to recall, hey, you know what, I did see that person. I saw him the day before and he was hanging out here.
In DeKalb, Marissa Lesner, 23 News.
It's sad. You gotta watch what you do at all times and what you got shown, because they'll take your phone from you, and that's sad.
It was a simple walk through a playground that turned dangerous. In just seconds, Amber and Matthew Lovejoy's son and his uncle became the victims of a mugging. Lovejoy says her brother-in-law and 4-year-old son were walking through the playground here at Haskell Elementary when a group of mostly teenagers came up from behind them, pushed them to the ground, and took their cell phone. Police told the Lovejoys the suspects are members of the Get Money Team, or the GMTs, a newly formed gang in Rockford. Matthew's friend was robbed at gunpoint on his way to work last week. The GMTs took his phone, then robbed his house.
They took his shoes, hats, TV, PS4, all of that.
The GMTs have made headlines before. Police say they're the same group behind a rash of carjackings last month, and it hasn't stopped there. Officers say members are responsible for several more car thefts, armed robberies, and home invasions. Investigators believe there are about 35 people associated with the gang. About 15 have been arrested.
Even though our offenders are relatively young, it is, they're still very dangerous for anyone, and, including the young people that are committing these crimes.
Thankfully, the Lovejoy's son was not hurt during the attack last week, but Amber and Matthew know it could have ended differently. In Rockford, Marissa Lesner, 23 News.
It's really frustrating.
Dave Tucker has had it up to here. He says every summer for the last 5 years, he's had to fight to get the grass cut in the empty lot behind his home.
Makes for an eyesore. There are still areas that haven't been touched by the mowers, and you can see they're 3 and 4 foot tall.
Tucker says these mowers showed up about half an hour after he told McChesney Park Village leaders he was calling us.
So they wind up cutting this maybe 3 times a year.
The weeds growing around the stakes and light poles, though, still haven't been touched. The village says all grass and weeds need to be less than a foot high. I'm about 5'10", and as you can see, some of these weeds around me are almost as tall as I am. The property is owned by Petrie Development Group. McChesney Park's planning and zoning inspector says the village has received complaints about that lot, but adds that Petrie has always mowed at the village's request. But Tucker says that sporadic maintenance isn't enough.
There's a couple of homes that are for sale up here in the subdivision. They have to drive through this to get to the home, and you know, if you're going to drive through that and see how it's being maintained now, you know, the likelihood of you purchasing, or are you going to purchase somewhere that's well maintained?
And we did reach out to Petrie Development but never heard back. We'll let you know if we do. Again, though, the village says it has never had a problem with Petrie responding to those complaints.